Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Looking at the snap count totals, what stood out in Green Bay's 20-19 win over Chicago on Sunday. Really, for me, I think there's only one place to start. It was the first game the Packers had played since trading Preston Smith to Pittsburgh, and a spot that's already been under the microscope this year for a lack of consistency in getting pressure to the quarterback. What would that look like against a Bears offensive line that was allowing the second most sacks in the National Football League before Week 11? How would the Packers split up the totals with Preston Smith out of the loop and now on the Steelers? Brenton Cox Jr. was a healthy scratch every game this season before Week 11. Preston Smith gets traded. You knew Brenton Cox would be active. He'd be in that mix of the top four, with Rashawn Gary, Lukas Van Ness, and Kingsley Enagbare, and then himself. Just didn't know how the snap count totals would disperse. Not really with Rashawn and Enagbare. You knew they would take over the top two spots. Maybe some thought LVN would, but if you look at the totals throughout this year, it kind of leaned towards them going with Gary and Enagbare at the top two spots with Preston Smith out of the picture. But the real question mark was Brenton Cox Jr. and how many snaps he would play, what sort of impact he could have immediately. And again, I say, Brenton Cox Jr. was a healthy scratch the first 10 games this season, or first 9 games, I should say, this season for Green Bay. Brenton Cox Jr. ended up with just 22 snaps played against the Bears. He turned those 22 snaps into 3 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 1 sack. Here's the surprise. Brenton Cox Jr. played 22 snaps against Chicago on Sunday. Lukas Van Ness played 25. About the same. And for what it's worth, if you want to stack up the numbers, Rashawn Gary, 46 snaps, Enagbare, 41. So Rashawn 46, Enagbare 41, LVN 25, Brenton Cox 22. There's a clear 1-2 in the pecking order right now, and then a second tier with LVN and now Brenton Cox. And so the Packers played a guy on Sunday who was a healthy scratch all year and played him about the same amount of snaps as their first-round pick a year ago at the same position in LVN. And I don't want to overreact to that, and I'll try not to. But I think it says a lot about where we're at and what they think of Lukas Van Ness at this moment. I said it in the reaction video following the win Sunday. There's a lot of different issues and different angles that you can attack with the pass rush or a lack thereof for Green Bay. One of them is certainly LVN. And the word I used in the recap video on Monday was invisible. LVN played 25 snaps Sunday against Chicago. I maybe noticed him on 1, 2. He's not getting quarterback pressures. He's not getting quarterback hits. He's not getting sacks. And you can talk about the sample size all you want and say, well, he's only out there for 25 snaps. Well, Brenton Cox was only out there for 22, about the same amount, and turned it into 2 TFLs and a sack. So what do you say then if you're in the camp of, well, LVN just isn't getting enough of a sample size out there on the field? An undrafted free agent at the same position as Lukas Van Ness, who hadn't played a snap this year, played about the same as LVN on Sunday and had a far greater impact than the former first-round pick out of Iowa. I'm not giving up on LVN. I am merely noticing and putting it on the record that a year and a half in, it's somewhat alarming. There's just no substance. There's nothing you can watch with LVN this year and hang your hat on. There isn't. And you can use the word frustrating. You can use irritating. I would say it's alarming. It's a first-round pick from last year that you knew they would ease him into it. He did not have to be some sort of superhero, some sort of savior at the position last year because they had Preston Smith, they had Rashawn Gary. But man, year and a half in, I expected a hell of a lot more production-wise from Lukas Van Ness. And instead, he was outperformed by someone at the same position who was an undrafted free agent that hadn't played a lick this year, not even a single snap before Sunday's game. And they had about the same timeshare on the field against Chicago. And I think the lack of a role right now for LVN speaks volumes to what the team thinks about him right now. And it's not, like I said, there's no substance with the play of LVN. Could it change? Sure in the hell hope so, right? I'm not calling it quits on Lukas Van Ness. That'd be foolish to do a year and a half in. I feel like there's an incredibly short leash at the quarterback position if you take one in the first round. Like if you don't see something after a year, panic starts to set in with the fan base and an organization. Thankfully for LVN, he's playing up front on the defensive line, so you get a little more leeway, I think, than if you are a quarterback, right? But it doesn't negate the lack of spark plays, the lack of really anything that we've seen or haven't seen from LVN. And Brenton Cox Jr. in a very similar role as far as it pertains to snap count totals did a hell of a lot more. And you can say, hey, you know, the sack he had, the tackle whiffed and he blew right by, on the TFL that he had, the tackle whiffed and he wrapped up the running back in the backfield, simple play. And on the sack, it was a play action bootleg to the right, and as soon as Caleb Williams turned around, Brenton Cox was there to greet him. I don't give a rip. You know, I don't give a shit about that. They were good plays by Brenton Cox. Am I supposed to take that away from him? No, he still made the plays. You know, I talked about as well in that reaction video Monday, I think I'm happy with the win rate I've seen at times from Kingsley Enagbare, but he needs to finish plays. He had Caleb Williams wrapped up on that 3rd and 19, but Williams wiggled out of it and found a 16-yard pass, and then they converted the 4th and 3 to Rome Odunze as they torched Keyshawn Nixon on the outside and worked their way into field goal range on that final drive. You still have to finish the plays. Brenton Cox finished those plays on Sunday, and he's been in a spot in just 1 week that we haven't really seen from LVN all year. And so, yeah, I'm concerned about it, but I'm not giving up completely on LVN because I do think it'd be just dumb to do that a year and a half into his career. The Packers clearly saw something that warranted taking him in the first round a year ago. It just hasn't worked out so far, but you hope it does. But, man, it's been incredibly disappointing. A guy who was a healthy and active all year just played about as many snaps as LVN on Sunday and had a way bigger impact. The pass rush is a mess in general. Maybe Brenton Cox gives you something moving forward. This wasn't a one-off, perhaps. That's got to be the hope if you're the Packers. Not to throw a ricochet shot at Preston Smith, but in 9 games this year, Preston Smith had 2.5 sacks. Brenton Cox has 1 in 1 game now. So who knows? The pass rush is, I'm going to harp on it as long as it remains an issue, and I think it will remain an issue. I don't think it's something that's going to become great or stellar overnight. 10 games, to me, large enough sample size to know it's just not that good. And if it were good, I'd celebrate it. But it's not. Maybe Brenton Cox can change that fortune a little bit for the Packers moving forward. But the real concern is, to me, Lukas Van Ness. There's nothing. There's nothing that you can circle, go back and look at the All-22 and try to come up with something if you want. It's bad. It's bad right now. But we'll hold out some sort of hope. But yeah, first game without Preston Smith on the edge. Rashawn Gary 46 snaps, Enagbare 41. That should not be the surprise. I don't even think it should be surprising that Enagbare outsnapped LVN by 16. To me, the surprise is that Brenton Cox had about as many snaps as LVN in his first action this year, and he deserved it. 3 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 1 sack. It is Mitch. I am on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate all the support. Looking over Packers snap count totals, what stood out in the 2019 win over Chicago. Got to look at the cornerback position because Jair Alexander tried to fight through a knee injury. Only lasted 10 snaps before exiting. He was in street clothes, if you will, in the second half. Wasn't in uniform, didn't have the shoulder pads on when the Packers emerged from the halftime break. Keyshawn Nixon ended up playing 71 of a possible 72 snaps. The surprise comes with the chain of command after that. Jair plays 10 snaps. Nixon 71 of 72 at corner. Carrington Valentine played 64 of a possible 72. I'm fine with that. Eric Stokes played just 4 snaps. Former first-round pick out of Georgia. There's also a trend here that is somewhat alarming. Eric Stokes, former first-round pick, pretty much out of the picture now. LVN, first-round pick last year and a half in, nothing. Quay Walker, former first-round pick, linebacker, another defensive player, a lot of concerns. Devontae Wyatt, former first-round pick, D-tackle out of Georgia. Great start to the year, got injured. Haven't seen much since he's returned from injury. Another first-round pick on the defensive side of the ball. There's a theme there that's growing, and it's growing in a very concerning manner. As it pertains to the cornerback spot on Sunday, Eric Stokes just 4 snaps. You're down your number 1 corner. Jair played just 10. You're down your number 1 corner. Eric Stokes still only gets 4. Had Jair played start to finish, had his normal workload, Nixon as the 2 and then Valentine, getting some looks here and there. Had that been the case and Stokes gotten 4 snaps, I wouldn't have batted an eye. I wouldn't have done a double take at the snap count total. The fact that Jair hardly played and Stokes still only got 4 snaps tells you all you need to know, and it shows really how far he's fallen out of favor in that cornerback room. And I feel for the dude. I thought Eric Stokes had a really, really good rookie year, and then injuries plagued him, and I don't want to use it as a crutch for him, no pun intended, but he has not been the same guy. And there was a foot injury, there was a leg injury, and for a guy who relied on his speed and his size, he has not been the same cornerback that we saw even dating back to his rookie season, and he's missed large chunks of games throughout the last couple of years. But to still be down your number 1 guy against Chicago on Sunday and you only get 4 snaps, I don't think Green Bay could carve it up any other way than just saying he's fallen out of favor. I would say it'd be an insult to try to tell the fan base, we just like the matchups better, and that's why Keyshawn and Carrington played the majority of the snaps at corner. You'd really have to put the blinders on to try to preach that to the fan base and have any of them or any of us believe it. Call it what it is. Eric Stokes has fallen down the pecking order to a spot where Green Bay doesn't even view him as a complimentary piece at this point. 4 snaps in a game where Jair only played 10. And again, in a game where did anyone watch Keyshawn Nixon on Sunday and their takeaway was wow, he looked incredible? Did anyone watch the game on Sunday and their takeaway was, man, Carrington Valentine was a lockdown corner against the Bears? I'm not going to say they were putrid or awful or atrocious or anything of that, but it wasn't like they were shutting things down, and that's why Eric Stokes didn't play. They could have used more production at corner, quite frankly, against the Bears. And Stokes still only got 4 snaps. And if Jair's injury lingers, if it comes to a point and comes to a head where he's missing postseason games, that room becomes super thin. It becomes super thin. And you know how I feel about Keyshawn Nixon on the outside. I don't think it's a fit. I don't think it's a fit at all. I think you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It's just not working. You go back to week 1 against Philadelphia in Brazil. Eric Stokes played 67 snaps compared to Carrington Valentine's 9. 67 snaps for Eric Stokes week 1 against Philly, 9 for Keyshawn Nix. And now the tables have turned, done a complete 180. This is a former 7th-round pick last year in Carrington Valentine who started 12 games a year ago due to injuries, due to the Rasul Douglas trade. If we look at this and we're trying to figure out what Green Bay has in Carrington Valentine, I like what I saw last year. 7th rounder out of Kentucky, forced into a starter's role. I thought he performed really, really well as a rookie. We haven't seen the jump this year with Valentine. We haven't seen the clear leap that maybe I was foolish for thinking could or would happen. But based off how well Valentine played last year in a starter's role, I was expecting more this year. Just haven't really seen it. And obviously they didn't see it in the offseason enough to warrant him getting more snaps week 1. Stokes 67 to his 9. But now, is Valentine getting snaps because Green Bay's like, wow, he's performing so well? Or is Carrington Valentine getting more snaps on Sunday against Chicago? What was it again? 64 to Stokes' 4. because Stokes just doesn't have it. And I fear it's the latter and not the former. I don't think Green Bay is giving Carrington Valentine 64 snaps to Stokes' 4 because they're like, wow, Carrington is really popping, and this is a great thing going right now. I still think he's fine. I think he's good. I think he's serviceable. I expected a leap in year 2 based off all the production we saw in year 1. But my fear is that Green Bay is giving Valentine all those snaps on Sunday compared to giving some of them to Stokes, or at least a few more, because they think what they have in Stokes is damaged goods at this point. That's what I fear. And that's a cornerback room that becomes super, super thin if Jair Alexander continues to miss time. Green Bay, they're in a spot where they are banking it on Jair to stay healthy for the stretch run and the postseason. And we've just come to know with Jair, and it's not his fault, right? Just like the injuries to Eric Stokes aren't his fault. We have come to know that relying on Jair Alexander's health in recent seasons has proved to be a big gamble and a big roll of the dice that oftentimes doesn't end up in your favor. So we'll see. That's the crux of it, though. That's the reality Green Bay's in. They are relying on Jair Alexander to get healthy and then stay healthy for the rest of the regular season in a postseason run. Because if he's out, you can say what you want about Jair, but with him out, that cornerback room becomes super, super thin. Because I'm not a big fan of Keyshawn Nixon on the outside. Eric Stokes has fallen out of favor. Corey Ballantyne hasn't played much at all since the Vikings game when he got torched by Jordan Addison. Super, super thin room when Jair Alexander is out of the equation due to injury. I was worried with the snap count totals at corner on Sunday because I thought even without Jair, maybe you can mix and match and have a nice three-way split with Nixon and Stokes and Valentine, but it was the Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon show. And that appears to be what Green Bay is going to roll with as long as Jair's out with the injury. Tip your cap, at least I do, to Jair for trying to gut it out in some fashion against the Bears in that one. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Subscribe if you can. You can. Subscribe if you want. Appreciate all the support. Last spot I wanted to look at was running back. Josh Jacobs played 37 of 46 snaps. Crazy. Green Bay's offense just had 46 snaps on offense against the Bears in Week 11. Josh Jacobs had the bell cow role. He looked like a bell cow running back. He was awesome. He was magnificent. He was phenomenal. Use whatever adjective you want. He played 37 of a 46. There's no surprise there. The surprise came at the number 2 spot. It was the third straight game that Chris Brooks outsnapped Emmanuel Wilson, but Emmanuel Wilson was on the field for just 3 snaps against Chicago. Just 3. To put that in perspective for you, Emmanuel Wilson had double-digit snap count totals in every game this year before Sunday. Again, Emmanuel Wilson was on the field for at least 10 snaps, oftentimes far more than that. Every game this year before Sunday, he played just 3 against Chicago to Brooks's 10. Now, again, Green Bay only had 46 snaps total on offense, but that is a glaring difference. Green Bay clearly likes what they see in Chris Brooks. I was super curious to see what this dynamic would look like with Marshawn Lloyd coming off IR. That dude cannot catch a break, the rookie out of USC. Set to come off IR, has his appendix taken out. Was set to play and suit up against Chicago on Sunday, and late last week, appendix burst, surgery. They have to activate him just to put him back on IR. I wanted to see what the dynamic looked like with Marshawn Lloyd, if he would get those number 2 running back snaps right now and for the foreseeable future. It might be Brooks over Wilson, and I liked what I saw with Emmanuel Wilson in that role so far this year, but Green Bay likes what they see with Brooks. I'm fine by that because we're not going to see Marshawn Lloyd for a while again now. I think, what is it, like week 15, 16, he could be activated if he does go back on IR. We'll have to see. Final note, we usually throw in 1 or 2 more things. I did want to add this to the equation. Largest gap in snap counts in favor of Edger and Cooper over Isaiah McDuffie all season came on Sunday. Edgerrin Cooper played 51 snaps. To bundle some perspective, that's 71% of the defensive snaps. Again, Edgerrin Cooper, 51 snaps on Sunday. The 51 snaps played and Cooper being on the field for 71% of the snaps were both season highs for the rookie out of Texas A&M. On the other side of the coin, Isaiah McDuffie was on the field for just 21 snaps, 29% of the total. Those were both season lows for Isaiah McDuffie. I've slammed my head off the wall repeatedly this year, more so in recent weeks, clamoring for Edgerrin Cooper to get more snaps. Those totals are going up for Cooper, down for McDuffie. It's not anything against McDuffie. I just think Edgerrin Cooper can be a game changer. Green Bay obviously sees it now too. He was out there for 71% of the snaps. I know people on social media have been wondering if there is a world that exists where Quay Walker gives up the green dot, moves to the will spot, and Eric Wilson gets the green dot. It's a big change. That would be a big change, and I don't know if Green Bay makes that move right now. Quay Walker has, he's racking up tackles, but it's been underwhelming from Quay Walker. It really has, and I can't see them at this stage of the season giving the green dot duties to Eric Wilson. It'd be a big shift and a big move for the defense. Perhaps it would work out better, if you had Eric Wilson with the green dot, and then you put Edgerrin Cooper out there and you have Quay Walker at the will. I don't know, because that's not a move that you tinker with, right? Like in game, you're not like, hey, we're gonna have Eric Wilson out there for some snaps. He'll have the mic in his helmet, and then other times it'll be Quay Walker. If you make that move, you have to go all in. You have to say, no, Eric Wilson, you're out there start to finish with the green dot. Quay, you're at the will. Like you don't really tinker with that where it's like where that would get some sort of split during a game. It's all or nothing, and I think because of that, Green Bay probably doesn't do it. Although, man, Quay Walker has, it appears like all the athleticism in the world, just can't piece the puzzle together completely. And I don't know why. I don't. But on a brighter note, at that same position, Edgerrin Cooper, 71% of the snaps, 51 total, both season highs for the rookie out of A&M, who I absolutely believe can be a game changer for this defense starting now too. Like you keep Edgerrin Cooper out there for over 70% of the defensive snaps moving forward the rest of the regular season, he's going to make plays. He's going to be out there enough, and we've seen enough from him in a smaller role as it pertains to snap count totals. He's going to have an impact. So I love that Green Bay's trending in that direction where Edgerrin Cooper's out on the field more and more. As for the pass rush, I'm fascinated to see what the totals are Sunday for Brenton Cox and LVN against San Francisco. Hopefully Jair's out there. If he's not, they're probably just going to do Keyshawn's out there for damn near 100% of the snaps on the outside, and Carrington Valentine 80, 90%, probably more towards 90% than 80% against San Francisco. Hopefully Jair's out there and good to go for Green Bay. We'll have to wait and see. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Always appreciate all the support. Click that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.